I never thought I'd post on Reddit about this, but I don't know where else to turn. My friends think I'm crazy, but something's happening, and I just can't shake it. It started a few weeks ago on the anniversary of Ryan's death. He was my best friend growing up, the guy I'd spend countless nights with playing video games, sneaking out, and talking about life. When he passed away in a car accident 2 years ago, it broke me in ways I couldn't describe. I tried to move on, but some days it feels like there's a gaping hole where he should be. On the evening it all began, I was sitting on my couch, scrolling through Reddit as usual, when my phone buzzed. I glanced at it casually, expecting some random notification. Instead, my breath caught in my throat. It was a text from Ryan's number. "Hey, it's been a while." I froze, my mind racing. I had deleted his contact months ago, but seeing his name on my screen made me feel like I was losing my mind. It wasn't possible it couldn't be him. Maybe someone had gotten a hold of his old number. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a while before I replied, "Who is this?" So I sat there, heart pounding in my chest as the typing bubbles appeared. Whoever it was, they were responding. "It's me, dude. I've been watching." I threw my phone down as if it had burned me. My skin crawled with unease. There was no way it was Ryan. He was gone. I'd attended his funeral, stared at his closed casket. It had to be some sick prank. I debated whether or not to respond. Curiosity, though, got the better of me. This isn't funny. "Who are you, really?" A new message flashed across the screen. "I didn't think you'd believe me. Meet me at our old spot. You know where." Our old spot. Only Ryan and I knew about that. It was an abandoned construction site behind the high school where we used to sneak cigarettes and talk about life. No one else knew. Now I was spooked. My heart was pounding harder, a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity creeping into my bones. How could someone know about that place? Still, there was no way I could go there, not at night. Not alone. Not when some stranger was texting me from my dead friend's phone. But the text kept coming, growing more insistent. "Don't make me wait. I need to tell you something. You deserve the truth." I couldn't resist anymore. I grabbed my jacket and keys, throwing on my sneakers as I rushed out the door. I felt like I was in a trance, like something was pulling me toward the site. It was foolish, I knew that. But a part of me, some desperate part, wanted it to be him. The air was cold when I reached the construction site, and the tall, skeletal beams loomed above me like silent sentinels. My phone buzzed again. "I'm here. Come closer." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I looked around, but the place was deserted, as it always was. The only light came from a flickering street lamp in the distance. I took a few steps toward the crumbling concrete foundation where we used to sit. Then another message appeared. "Behind you." My blood ran cold. I spun around, half expecting to see Ryan, but there was nothing. Just the empty darkness, punctuated by the faint rustling of leaves in the wind. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a picture. Though my stomach twisted as I opened it, it was me standing at the site, right where I was at that very moment. The picture was taken from behind. I was being watched. I scanned the area frantically, but I still saw no one. Who the hell was doing this? My hands were shaking as I typed, "This isn't funny. Where are you?" The response came instantly. "I'm right here. You just can't see me yet." I started to back away, my every instinct telling me to run. But then another text flashed on the screen, one that made my blood freeze. It wasn't an accident. I didn't die by mistake. My breath caught. What did that mean? Ryan's car accident was tragic, yes, but no one ever thought there was anything more to it. It was a rainy night, and he had lost control on a wet road. But now, I wasn't so sure. "There's more. You have to know the truth." I wanted to run, but my feet were rooted to the ground. "What truth?" I texted back, dreading the answer. "They lied to you. I wasn't alone that night." Alone? My mind flashed to the countless conversations I had with Ryan's parents, his sister. No one ever mentioned anyone else in the car. Who was with him, and why had no one told me? Check the accident reports. Look closer. My heart was hammering in my chest now. I fumbled with my phone, trying to search online for any mention of someone else involved, but there was nothing. How could there be no mention of another person? And if there was, why would they hide it? Then the final message appeared. Don't trust them. They're watching you now too. My phone died, the screen fading to black just as I saw a shadow flicker in the corner of my vision. I spun around, heart pounding in my throat, but once again, I was alone. Or so I thought. I tried to start my car, but my hands were trembling too much. Every shadow around me seemed alive, and I swore I saw movement in the distance. Was someone following me? I couldn't stay there any longer. Finally, the engine roared to life and I drove away, adrenaline surging through me. Back at home, I plugged my phone in, hoping I was wrong, hoping I had imagined the texts. But as soon as the phone powered back on, the messages continued. This time it wasn't Ryan's number. It was a blocked number. You're next. The words were simple, but they struck me like a hammer. I didn't know what to do. I felt trapped, as though the walls were closing in on me. What did Ryan mean that someone else was in the car? And what did this mean for me? Then I started seeing the car. A black sedan. It followed me everywhere. First, I thought it was just paranoia, but the car was there every time I left my apartment. It was there when I went to the grocery store, parked a few spaces away, its windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. Every night, another text, always the same thing. You're next. On. I tried blocking the number, but the text would still come through from another number, then another. It was like Ryan was trying to warn me, trying to tell me something bigger was happening. But now I didn't know who to trust. One evening, while sitting in my dark apartment, the fear gripping me so tightly I could barely breathe, I received the final message. Check under your bed. I stood frozen in place. Slowly, I lowered myself to the floor, heart racing, and peeked under my bed. There was nothing there, but a loud knock came from the door, followed by 3 words that sent chills down my spine. It's too late. It all started with a fleeting glance. I was washing my face in the bathroom, my hands cupped under the cold water, eyes half closed in that foggy early morning days. When I looked up, there was a figure behind me, just a shadow, barely visible in the dim light. I turned around quickly, but no one was there. The apartment was empty, just like it always was. I shrugged it off, figuring it was a trick of the light. I lived alone after all, and had gotten used to the odd creaks and groans of my old place. But as the days passed, the feeling of being watched became harder to ignore. It wasn't until the following week that I saw him clearly. I was standing in the hallway, adjusting a crooked picture frame, when I caught a glimpse of something in the mirror hanging nearby. A man. He stood still, his form barely distinguishable in the glass, like he was part of the reflection itself. His face was obscured, but I could see enough to know he wasn't me. I spun around, heart racing, but again, no one was there. Just an empty hallway and the soft hum of the city outside my windows. I moved closer to the mirror, leaning in, my breath fogging up the glass. I half expected to see him standing there, but the reflection was just me, pale and wide-eyed, staring back. It unsettled me, though, enough that I decided to leave the mirror covered with an old sheet that night. But the figure didn't stay in the bathroom. He began appearing elsewhere. The first time I noticed him again, I was in the kitchen. I reached for a glass in the cabinet, and as I closed the door, I saw his reflection in the window above the sink. He was closer this time, just standing there, watching. My chest tightened as a cold wave of fear washed over me. I pulled the blinds down, trying to shut him out, but the image of his shadowy form stuck with me. It haunted my dreams that night. A man just out of reach, always behind glass, waiting for me to notice him. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Stress, I told myself. exhaustion, maybe even a mild case of paranoia. I was in between jobs and spending too much time alone in my apartment, obsessing over things that didn't matter. It was easy to explain away the strange occurrences. But it got worse. Every time I looked at a reflective surface, whether it was the mirror in the bathroom, the windows at night, or even the faint reflection in my computer screen, I'd see him, and each time he was closer. I stopped looking at mirrors entirely, going out of my way to avoid catching my own reflection. The unease gnawed at me constantly. I started taking quick showers, spending as little time as possible in the bathroom, and keeping the blinds drawn tight all the time. I even covered the mirrors, hoping that if I couldn't see him, he wouldn't see me. But then, I noticed him in places where mirrors weren't involved. The glare on a polished floor, the faint reflection in the glass of a picture frame. He was everywhere. One night, I was sitting on the couch, staring at my reflection in the TV screen. The room was dimly lit, casting just enough light for me to make out my own figure slouched against the cushions. I leaned forward, squinting to see past my reflection. That's when I saw him again. He wasn't just a shadow this time, he was detailed, solid, and standing right behind me in the reflection. My breath caught in my throat, and before I could stop myself, I looked over my shoulder. The room was empty. My heart pounded in my chest, and I quickly looked back at the TV screen. He was still there, closer than before, his face coming into focus for the first time. His eyes were dark and hollow, and his mouth stretched into a grotesque grin that sent a shiver down my spine. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed the remote and shut the TV off, plunging the room into darkness. But the eerie feeling remained. He was still there. I could feel him. I began researching, diving into forums and articles about apparitions, hallucinations, anything that could explain what was happening. But no matter where I looked, I couldn't find anything concrete. It felt like I was going mad. I even considered smashing the mirrors, covering every reflective surface in my apartment, but deep down I knew it wouldn't help. He wasn't just in the mirrors, he was in the reflection, watching, waiting. Then the final straw came. I was in bed, unable to sleep, tossing and turning in the early hours of the morning. My eyes wandered to the window, the faint reflection of the room visible against the night sky outside. I saw him standing at the foot of my bed, closer than ever. His face was clearer this time, gaunt and pale, eyes fixed on me with a hunger that made my skin crawl. My pulse raced as I squeezed my eyes shut, telling myself it wasn't real. But when I opened them again, he was right beside me, his face mere inches from mine in the window's reflection. I couldn't move. I could only watch as his hand reached toward me in the glass. And then I felt it. A cold, skeletal hand brushed my arm. I bolted upright, gasping for air, my entire body shaking. I looked around, but once again the room was empty. The only sound was my ragged breathing. I don't know what he is or what he wants, but I've stopped looking into mirrors altogether now. I know he's still there, creeping closer each day, waiting for the moment I can't escape his reach. It's only a matter of time before he steps out of the reflection into the real world. And I'm terrified that when he does, I won't be able to stop him. Parenthood changes you in ways you don't expect. Sleepless nights, endless worry, and the constant need to keep your child safe, it becomes part of your identity. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened with the baby monitor. It started innocently enough. My partner and I had recently welcomed our first child into the world, a baby girl named Mila. We were still adjusting to the sleepless nights, the 2 a.m. feedings, the endless cycle of diapers and laundry. To help keep an eye on her while she slept, we installed a baby monitor complete with video and sound. Most nights I'd sit in the living room, glancing occasionally at the monitor while Mila slept peacefully in her crib. The soft hum of white noise from the machine was a comforting backdrop to the stillness of our home. It felt reassuring knowing I could see her whenever I wanted, hear her slightest stir. Then came the first voice. I was alone that night, sitting in the kitchen, enjoying a rare moment of calm with a cup of tea. Mila had been asleep for over an hour, and the house was quiet. save for the gentle crackling of the baby monitor on the counter beside me. I wasn't paying it much attention, scrolling through my phone absent-mindedly, when I heard it. A voice. It was faint, almost imperceptible at first. A garbled whisper, like static mixed with human speech. I froze, my eyes darting to the monitor. The small screen showed Mila still in her crib, sleeping soundly, but the voice continued low, distorted, and speaking words I couldn't quite make out. I thought it was a glitch. The baby monitor must have picked up some interference from a nearby radio or another device, right? I dismissed it as nothing and turned the volume down a notch. But then it happened again the next night. This time I was in the living room, the monitor perched on the coffee table in front of me. I had just settled in after putting Mila down for the night when I heard the voice return. It was clearer now, though still warped by static. I leaned in closer, my skin prickling with unease. It wasn't my partner, and there was no one else in the house. The sound was faint but unmistakably there, a strange, distorted voice, murmuring softly. I grabbed the monitor and stared at the screen. Mila lay perfectly still in her crib, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. The voice continued, low and unintelligible, like a one-sided conversation. My heart began to race. I stood up and rushed to her room, my feet moving faster than my mind could process. The door creaked open, and I flicked on the light, expecting to find something. But the room was empty, just as I had left it. Mila slept soundly, her blanket tucked around her. The monitor, still in my hand, was silent now. The voice was gone. I convinced myself it was interference, just like before. Maybe some neighbor's wireless device was crossing signals with ours. It seemed plausible, and I didn't want to think about the alternative. But the voice didn't stop. Over the next few days, it grew louder, clearer. I could almost make out words, though they were garbled, as if spoken through water or faulty speaker. Sometimes I thought I heard my daughter's name, Mila. Other times I'd hear fragments of sentences, but they were always cut off before I could understand. Each time I rushed to her room, the same scene greeted me, an empty, quiet space, with Mila peacefully asleep. I checked the windows, the closets, even the baby monitor itself, but there was never anything out of place. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. One night, after a particularly long day, the voice came back, but this time it was different. I was lying in bed, trying to relax, while my partner had gone to work a night shift. The monitor was on the nightstand, the soft glow of the screen showing Mila fast asleep in her crib. I was drifting off when I heard it again, the voice. But now it was louder, more urgent. Mila, Mila, come closer. The voice was no longer garbled. It was clear, unnervingly so. I bolted upright, grabbing the monitor with shaking hands. The voice was distorted, unnatural, as if something was imitating human speech but didn't quite understand how it worked. It was like a mockery of a real voice. I've been waiting for you. Ah. I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin. My throat tightened as I stared at the screen. Nothing had changed. Mila was still asleep, but the voice, it wasn't just speaking at her anymore. It was speaking to her. So I jumped out of bed and ran to her room, fear clawing at my insides. When I opened the door, I was met with the same scene as always, Mila, asleep in her crib, undisturbed. But I knew what I had heard. I checked every corner of the room, pulling back curtains, searching behind furniture, as though I'd find some intruder hiding in the shadows. But the room was empty, silent, except for the soft hum of the baby monitor. That's when the realization hit me. The voice wasn't coming from her room. It was coming through the monitor. Whatever was speaking, it wasn't in the room with Mila, it was on the other side of the monitor, where I couldn't reach it. The voice returned later that night, more insistent. She's mine. My stomach turned. I turned the monitor off, but the words echoed in my head, the distorted tone lingering in the darkness. I sat in the hallway outside Mila's room, too terrified to leave her alone, but too afraid to step back inside. What did it want? How was this happening? The next day, I replaced the monitor, thinking that a new device would solve the issue. Maybe it was faulty technology, some kind of hack I didn't understand. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't something that could be fixed with a replacement. That night, after setting up the new monitor, I held my breath, praying that the voice wouldn't come back. Hours passed in tense silence. Just as I was beginning to let my guard down, the monitor crackled to life again. "You can't stop me." My heart nearly stopped. The voice was back, more menacing than ever, and now I could hear something else, a faint, rasping sound, like breathing. The air felt thick and oppressive. I couldn't move, couldn't think. And then the worst thing happened. Mila stirred in her crib, her tiny arms stretching out, as if reaching for something or someone just outside the view of the camera. I watched in horror as the voice whispered again, soft but unmistakable. "Mila, come to me." In that moment, I realized this wasn't just some glitch or cross signal. Something unnatural had attached itself to the monitor, something dark and sinister, and it wanted my child. Without thinking, I rushed into her room, scooping her up in my arms. She let out a small whimper, but didn't wake. It turned off the monitor, ripping it from the wall, and threw it into the trash. But even now, with the monitor gone, I still hear the voice, sometimes faint, distant, like a whisper in the night. And I know deep down, it's still out there, waiting. If you want to see more horror stories, please like the video, share your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Stay with us, thank you, and see you in the next videos.